Genade, genade, we kunnen er toch over praten, luiden de laatste woorden van Theo van Gogh. Hoe kunnen we zijn smeekbeden als opdracht lezen? Hoe hou je het gesprek gaande in een land dat met elkaar lijkt uitgepraat? Nu, 20 jaar later, gaan grote denkers en makers hierover met elkaar in gesprek. We kunnen er toch over praten.
But also for, yes, again, welcome in the Balie. Good that you're here. Warm welcome not only to the people here in the audience, but also people watching the live stream from home. My name is Marlijn Geurts, and I will moderate this evening on academic freedom. And this is part, as you just saw, of the Vrijdenkersfestival. That's a festival that the Balie organizes in honor of the 750th anniversary of the city. It just started, and we do so in collaboration with the gemeente Amsterdam. And the theme of this festival is based on the last words of Theo van Gogh, who was murdered 20 years ago. And he said, genade, we kunnen er toch over praten. In English, have mercy, can't we talk about it? And that's exactly what we try to do today. We will speak about a topic that is heavily debated, I think inside university, outside university, in the media. And we have people tonight who are very opinionated about the shortcomings of the university. And their opinions differ very much from each other. But nevertheless, they are here to exchange ideas and about how the university should change. And I'm very glad that they are here together. I think it's inevitable that you will hear something tonight that you don't agree with. But I will make sure that it's an open discussion tonight. So just the basics. We let each other speak. We don't insult and yell at each other. And that's for everyone here in the room. And we will speak about academic freedom tonight. I think it's a term that a lot of people use, but also a lot of people misuse or misunderstand. So that's why we thought it's a good idea if we have a short explanation about that. And Veronica Baas, she's program editor here at the Balie, will start off the evening with a few introductory remarks. So give her a warm welcome.
Yes. So academic freedom is, like Marlijn just said, a heavily debated topic. This week alone, there was a discussion about whether the pro-Palestinian activist Mohammed Khatib could speak at the Radboud University in Nijmegen. But there was also a discussion about whether his right to speak had anything to do with academic freedom at all, or whether it was just a question of freedom of speech at a university. So I will start by giving some very brief remarks about what Dutch institutions, academic institutions and commissions have said about academic freedom in recent years. So in 2021, the KNAW, the Royal Dutch Academy of Arts and Sciences, published a report on the meaning and the limits of academic freedom, and they prefaced their report as following, and I quote, "Academic freedom is essential for good science, but not unlimited. Academics must always strike the right balance between academic freedom and independence on the one hand and their social responsibility on the other. And for academics, academic freedom means that they can freely conduct their scientific research, communicate their findings, and teach. And for example, they should be able to choose their own research topics, their own research questions and methods, and share their views freely, even if they're still provisional. Academic freedom requires freedom of expression, but these concepts are not equal to each other. Academic freedom accrues to people in their positions as academics. Freedom of expression accrues to all citizens, regardless of their function. And the limits to academic freedom are further defined by a set of principles that apply to all academics, and they are honesty and diligence and transparency, independence and responsibility. And in their research, academics must consider those involved in their research and in their environment. 2 years ago, the topic of academic freedom came into the public debate when Laurens Buys, then an employee at the University of Amsterdam, filed whistleblowing complaints. Very brief summary. Buys accused its employer of grave institutional wrongdoings, threatening academic freedom and the quality of research. And the university responded by appointing an external committee led by Karel Stolker. And they concluded, and I quote again, that there was no institutional wrongdoing within the faculty or program that fundamentally and acutely threatens academic freedom and thus the quality of teaching and research. However, they also said, The committee does see that the polarization in society and the increasing grimness of the social and political debate in the Netherlands do not bypass the department at the UvA. This is more generally, but certainly not only, the case in scientific disciplines that dealing with social and more normative or sensitive issues. This grimness, which can sometimes be distinctly intimidating for teachers, students, researchers, and administrators, can strike at the heart of academic freedom and lead to unwanted self-censorship and other forms of undesirable restraint among researchers, teachers, and students. This development requires more attention. And then they finished by giving 10 recommendations to the UvA, and they said that all Dutch other universities could also use them. And they are here, and you can read them. And maybe they will be some kind of tool that we will refer to later in this conversation. But of course, there is freedom of speech, so maybe the conversation will go somewhere else. Yes, that's it.
Thank you very much. I think it's also nice to know who is in the audience here, because maybe a lot of people here in the audience could also be on stage tonight. So maybe to test that, who is working at the university? Okay, can I go to one person and maybe ask, like, are you worried about academic freedom? Can I go to you?
Yes.
I will hold the mic.
Yeah, yes, indeed, I am worried about the future of academic freedom.
Yeah, and can you maybe explain why?
Well, I think it is extremely important that we feel, as teachers, we feel maybe academically challenged, but safe in a way to conduct our own research the way we want it to conduct. So if that is danger, then it's like domino effect, and many things would be in danger, I guess.
Okay, that's quite a thing to say. And what I think, if you should of course be safe to do your research and to teach. What do you hope to hear tonight? Maybe.
No, I would like to hear what the discussants are going to say about, especially about the woke and anti-woke maybe debates. And I would like to hear more about that.
Okay, clear. Who is a student here at the university, somewhere in the Netherlands? It's not that much, actually. Can I ask you, are you worried about academic freedom as a student?
I'm not super worried about it, but I do notice in classrooms, for example, that some discussions are getting a bit heated, and that also some people are maybe not saying how they feel about certain topics because they're afraid that people will have an opinion about it. So that's what I'm more worried about.
Yeah, and maybe same question for you. What do you hope to hear tonight?
I would like to hear some different views as well on the topic, as well the woke, anti-woke topics I notice is very polarized in some classrooms, and not everyone is able to say what they think. But also, for example, the Israel-Gaza situation is also very sensitive, of course.
Yeah.
So I think we will talk about a bit about that.
Okay, thanks a lot. There will be also room for questions from your side, and we will involve you at the end of the program. So if you have a question, please keep it for the end. We thought it's good to start with a student perspective. So that's why I would like to give the floor to Saskia Lee Bergman, and she is a member of the student committee of Room for Discussion. Give her a warm welcome.
Hi, I'm here today speaking on behalf of Room for Discussion, the student-led interview platform at the University of Amsterdam. We have a long tradition of facilitating discussions between academics, practitioners, and students. Last year, we celebrated our 15th year. It was remarkable in and of itself, but it was also remarkable to us, like to most students and staff, because of the protests and the tensions at the university. We welcome protest at our interviews. We find it something constructive. We encourage critical questionings. We find it something that builds onto discussion. We value the right to protest as much as we value the right to freedom. Protest that limits the right to freedom should not be allowed. I wish to tell you tonight about my experiences last year as part of Room for Discussion, the state of academic debate at the university, and the role of universities in it. While I definitely do not speak on behalf of all students, I believe that my platform, Room for Discussion, is a good thermometer to indicate where academic debate and discussion is at generally at universities. In March, our interview with the military chief of NATO, Admiral Rob Bauer, was stopped due to disruptions. About 5 minutes into the interview, a small group started using a megaphone to yell protest slogans against NATO, the military, later also the government, capitalism, the university, and also against us, the students organizing the interview. The interview was no longer audible. We asked them nicely, and later also not so nicely, to please give a statement instead of yelling through the megaphone. And they continued to be mad. I knew one of the protesters also personally. I said her name, I asked her to talk to me like we normally do. I was met with a shrug and continued yelling. They did at some point accept the invitation to give a statement, but they did not accept disrupting the interview. They described Admiral Bauer as a representative of capitalist military colonial power that does not deserve a platform at the university. I got up on stage myself to make my own statement about how I come from Estonia, how I see NATO and thus power also differently. I see NATO as a liberating force, not an occupier, as someone that stands for freedom, not against it, as someone that should be held for the lack of action, should be held accountable for the lack of action, not for the excess of it. We did end up having to stop the interview because of the continued disruptions. Me and my friends in the committee struggled unexpectedly much with this. We kept thinking about how intense it was to be yelled at, to be spoken through as if we weren't there, as if we weren't colleagues and students in the same classrooms, to be completely ignored and not listened to. It was a very eerie and strange feeling that I think stayed with many of us until today. Even after the interview, me and some other members of the committee were made fun of online in parody videos. I had never ever considered that by joining a university committee, I would become a victim of online hate speech or something like that. I had never considered that. I have been protesting also a fair bit myself, for climate change, for gay rights, for the rights of Palestinians. I can understand and empathize with the anger that somebody feels against a person they don't like, in this case, Admiral Bauer. But I cannot to this day understand the decision to continue disrupting a discussion organized by your colleagues with an audience of over 100 people who are all continuously saying that they do want to continue listening. I think what hurts most for us at Room for Discussion till this day is that we were at that point not able to go on with our interviews the same way. We could not organize interviews anymore on topics that were deemed controversial without fearing for and calculating for protest, without second guessing whether it is something that we do want to take on. Our interview with former Minister of Defense, Kaja Longre, was scheduled multiple times and ended up happening at the Marineterrein behind military checkpoints. Our interview with Mayor Halsema was moved to a closed-off hall at the municipality just a day before the interview because of security concerns. We don't want this to happen. We want to continue discussing at the university. But at some point, it is not possible anymore because either the guests don't accept the invitations because of these fears, or it is not something that the security can sign off on. Reflecting back on all this, I don't feel anger at the protesters. Well, maybe a little bit because of the personal stuff. But mainly, I feel frustrated that me and my friends to this day are not organizing open discussions the same way. The question of, but protests, and all of that, going through all of that again, is something that's now a consideration. The discussion around not giving a platform and fundamentally denying the right to speak to people is something that changes the way that academic debate can happen, for us and also for the protesters. I also don't know what's right. I also don't know who should be saying what and where and how. And I don't like it when people don't agree with me. But I'm very sure that we cannot let this deplatformization go on because this is standing completely against academic debate and exchange of ideas. Academic freedom and debate is the cornerstone for our education system, for the way that we know things and understand the world around us. Disagreement and discussion is exactly the point of it, but not complete interference. The moment we stop listening to each other, it's no longer there. Debate and discussion is being thrown around as something easy to do. Not to throw any shade at the event tonight, but oh yes, let's have a panel on this or a round table on that, and it will all be fine. It's not that easy. In order to have a valuable discussion, people need to be ready to listen, to seek first to understand and then to respond. It is difficult and very frustrating and sometimes very scary It's difficult to give respect and a platform to ideas that you don't agree with, to see people that speak against your rights, what you believe in, what you consider to be the right thing, to have them speak at an institution that you work for or that you study at, and to see them having big audiences. But we're not convincing anyone with silence, and no one is learning from not listening. This is what is the foundation of our academic system. Protests, radical actions, big movements are very good for starting these discussions, and that is very important. But they should never stand in the way of discussion. Same as university decisions should not stand in the way of that. Everyone deserves the respect and trust to discuss. It is on all of us to continue taking charge in making sure that this can happen. But I think that the university carries utmost responsibility ensuring that these principles are adhered to, that people don't feel that they don't have anywhere to go. What matters for me as an interviewer, I want to have discussions on defense and feminism and Israel-Palestine. I want this to be able to happen and without afterthought or consideration or logistics. I want us to all come together and be happy. It's not easily done. But I also don't want my fellow students and university staff to feel like their only chance of making sure that they can let the university know of what they believe in and what they think is to then to stop by interviews. I think that for a respectful academic environment, a lot of work needs to be done. And it's important that institutions like the university and the government, I don't know where my hope relies on that one, but specifically the university takes on what is in their power and protects these freedoms and facilitates discussions and especially leads by example in listening and giving a platform to their own students and listen with respect and understanding. Only then we can make sure that we don't turn on each other. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you raise a lot of interesting questions that we will discuss, and we do so with 3 scholars, and I would like to invite them to be with me on stage. You can come and then I will introduce you later. Please join. Yes. Yes. We have 3 people here, 3 professors, Younes Saramifar, Jelle van Baardewijk, and Petra Verdonk. Younes Saramifar is an interdisciplinary scholar who explores the concept of inhumanities by looking at violence and transgressions that arise when objects, bodies and ideas are taken out of their context. And he's doing that at the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam. Next to him, we have Jelle van Baardewijk. He's an empirical philosopher researching the market, government and morality. And he teaches courses on ethical philosophy to business students. And he's also a presenter on the YouTube channel De Nieuwe Wereld, which discusses societal issues from a perspective that challenges mainstream views. And he was working for a long time at the VU, but he's now working at Nyenrode University and the Hogeschool Rotterdam. And last but not least, Petra Verdonk, Associate Professor of Medicine and of Ethics, Law and Medical Humanities at the University of Amsterdam. She co-founded in de Nederlandse vereniging Gender en Gezondheid and is an active member of Extinction Rebellion. Give them a warm welcome of applause. Yes. Maybe Petra, to start off with you. Veronica gave in the beginning an introduction about academic freedom, and what I already said, it's a term that is often used, and people have various definitions of it. Maybe to start off for you, how would you describe in your own words what academic freedom is?
It's fascinating.
Oh, sorry. Microphone.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, microphone. I was looking at the statements about academic freedom. It's very interesting because from a medical science perspective, that's a bit different. Like it's somehow as if academic freedom does not apply to us in a way. You know, it's like people are looking for in medicine. They're looking for how are mechanisms. What is a solution for a particular health problem? So it's a fascinating discussion for me that I only ran into when I started doing activism.
It's to understand it right, it's not a discussion within your faculty.
It's definitely not a discussion. It's not a discussion, although what is academic is more of a discussion than academic freedom or what is allowed in medicine, in types of research, in sorts of methodologies. There's very much a hierarchy in what methodologies are used. Maybe you all familiar with the RCTs. the golden standard of research, and doing other types of research is kind of more difficult and more difficult to find money for, funding for, to implement, to get published, etc. So it's really a different world in that sense than I think Eunice, and philosophy is really, really different. Although philosophy is, of course, also in the ethics department, a big pillar.
Okay, maybe to test it, Jelle, is you can just keep the microphone, then it's easy. Is academic freedom very different from what Petra is saying if you look at the philosophy department? You can keep the microphone a bit.
Philosophers tend to think that whatever they argue for is worth articulating.
Yeah.
So, but maybe that in that way we can shake hands with gender studies. So generally speaking, I think that we experience a lot of freedom to explore ideas. Yeah.
So there's not that much
there's both a lot of woke and anti-woke. Apparently, people want to talk about that. That's interesting in the philosophy department, I think. So there's lots of radicalization, and that's because philosophers, they set up arguments. They have gedachtegangen.
But if you try to define it in your own words and say like, hey, here, this is the part where it is at stake. Because we have this whole discussion because you are all three of the opinion that academic freedom is at stake. Can you maybe shortly say that?
So, for instance, regarding the Corona debate a few years ago, I experienced a lot of positivism in universities. So people said, well, you can criticize vaccination or you can criticize lockdowns because you are a philosopher. But of course, that's an opinion. Because reality is that Corona is a very serious problem and we all need to stay at home. So there was kind of a rock bottom of knowledge that was supposed to be there, and that was used as a legitimization to keep children from home, at home from school, which was a very normative thing. So philosophers could have been far more critical on using the anxiety for Corona for closing schools. So there was, and I think in this problem, in a way, remains in the discussion on Ukraine and Russia. So, and the idea that NATO, that you can give different interpretations of NATO, not only a defensive, that's my judgment would be, it's not only an order of defense, but also of offense. So its role in Ukraine can be problematized. Can be, and well, where at universities are people actually conducting research at this multifaceted NATO? I'm unsure. So I think that there's a very strong specific train of thought, a blikvernauwing. There's groupthink.
Okay.
So on those two cases, but there are more. So climate change as well. Okay. So what if you don't believe in SDG? What if you think this is all greenwashing? So I'm a rather skeptic about it. Where in universities are people actually pulling questions regarding SDG? We are very ideological in the ecological debate. It's taken over by compliance officers. It's very problematic. It is deep into the identity of both the VU and the UvA. At the same time, it's a policy. It's very close to new public management with an ethical flavor. So a third case. So I can go on. Okay,
dus you said, if I summarize you correctly, a lot of cases where a lot of questions are not raised within the academia.
Yeah, where there's groupthink, and I think that positivism is part of the problem. The claim that the truth is clearly there and that there are not many more interpretations than the one given by, well, the scientist most suitable, most close to the object.
Okay. I see Younes nodding. You agree?
No.
Okay. not about, maybe not to delve into the topics that he is raising, because I think then we can discuss 3 hours, but maybe the fact like where is the academic freedom at stake? He says a lot of topics are not being critically discussed within the university, and I think that's a problem.
So I'm not going exactly to react to you because then we will be at it tomorrow morning. So, but let me just what I mean. I don't agree with this, but at the same time, because you said for three of us, academic freedom is at stake. Academic freedom is not at stake for me. The very idea of what is and who is human is at stake for me. So, and then of course it comes to a question of, let's say simply to get back to debate of what is academic freedom, or if it is in these bullet points. Let me simplify it differently. Academic freedom in practice, if you look at, so institution is one thing, practice of institution, which is everyday life of university, is another thing. Academic freedom has been a kind of a unicorn. So everybody is chasing it. In that chase, knowledge production happens. And of course, in that chase, you stumble upon a particular person comes down with the hammer, you cannot say that. Or give some people pass to say that and not say something else. So you see, there's a filtration happens in that chase. So academic freedom is not something I can define it, or anybody can define it, because you cannot even define what is freedom. It constantly to contextualize. So it's a unicorn. We are promised for it. It is an illusion. It is not going to exist. Even if you give it the law or definition and policy, we forget there is self-censoring is happening. You cannot basically remove racism from the universities. Then a lot of racialized minorities, gendered minorities, self-censor. So give it a policy as much as you want, but the policy is not going to remove racism, either in society or university. So I stick to the principle of academic freedom is a unicorn, is an illusion. In that chase, we try to do something called science. And I emphasize on try.
Okay, maybe short reaction from Petra, and I think then we go to first statement. Petra.
No, I agree with Jelle in the sense that positivist science is let's say the most important way of doing science, most relished type of doing science, and that's very much medicine in and of itself. Then in a humanities department, there are a lot of questions that people can ask, of course, within the left and the right side of what is allowed, what questions are going to be asked. I'm in gender studies in medicine. I've been doing a lot of work on that. I could ask those questions. I mean, as long as I would not be too loud, that was, you can stay in your niche, and that's fine. And I have had the freedom to teach on those issues. But yes, there is self-censoring. Academic freedom is a value, is something that we value. It's not something that we can reach. That's with all, like peace is a value, and equality is a value, and it's not there. But we fight for it. I mean, yeah. But is it there? No, it's not there. So is it now at stake more than it was? I don't see that really, because for me, in medicine, it hasn't been really, really very big anyways. So I don't feel like now we're in trouble because of what is happening more than we were.
So it has always been there, in a way, but not in the medicine department.
is very technical in that sense.
Yeah. Okay, so if I maybe conclude already a bit from what we now said is like, it's maybe on paper and theory, it's not such of a discussion, maybe something that's even not so relevant to discuss, but if you look at practice and maybe at outside your department, more university as a whole, then it gets at stake. Something like that. I think we're going to delve into 3 different topics that you all want to address. We asked all the 3 of you to say something about, make a statement about what the ideal university should look like. We have different topics, but we keep this thing that we just discussed in mind. And I first would like to give the floor to Jelle. So you can stand there and give your speech.
Okay, so I'll give I'll share a few thoughts with you on the ideal university, and then we'll discuss them, if I understand correctly. Yeah, let me start with if you want to address the ideal university, if you want to develop an idea of the ideal university, you, of course, especially for a philosopher, you should, well, be aware of reality, yeah? The dynamics of reality, the dialectics, perhaps, of reality. Because well, the day-to-day work is always different from the ideals that you have together and that you encompass. The reality of today's university is what policy students and researchers call an institution based on principles of new public management. In other words, if you want to understand what is happening at universities and what is going wrong, start with finance. The way we finance universities, most of the money goes through the amount of students that you attract. So my first point is that we have a very difficult bekostigingsmodel in Dutch academia. The money nudges most of the things. If you have a lot of students, basically you can attract a lot of university professors. That is why we have many more professors in marketing than we have in Goethe or some theoretical problem in physics or biology or even psychology. So that is because most people in the Netherlands study marketing or business, or give it a name, business topics. Psychology is also pretty big, by the way, but a lot of debate is uneasy because we don't have that many people, and most of these people, are basically paid by the amount of students. That's also why we have a lot of teachers and professors in law. It's a big program. The humanities are in difficult water, have been for the last 20 years. Last week, it kind of was communicated by the University of Utrecht that we will no longer have German or French. Leiden, same history. There's only one cause, and that is the model of financing these study programs. So keep an eye on the money. First point. Second point, because of this focus on student numbers, we internationalized in the Netherlands. Internationalization is, of course, also an ideological thing, because science is, since it re-emerged in the Middle Ages, also an international thing. Back in the days, we had Latin as the lingua franca. Now we have English. Today is the Reformation Day, perhaps some of you know. And the process of Reformation has everything to do with bringing the institutions back to the normal people by exactly endorsing the people's language. So Dutch as an academic language is not some coincidental Low Countries thing. It is very much related to a spiritual movement towards the people, from a l'art pour l'art international elitist institution to an institution that is actually close to the reality where people live in. So de vernederlandsing van universiteiten is part of a movement of emancipation, has been. In this day and age, so roughly since 20 years, we have kind of killed Dutch as an academic language. The first reason for this, ending Dutch for being a serious academic language with Dutch journals, Dutch academic debate, this what we're doing tonight is a nice example, unfortunately. The first reason is, and you should think about this, money. Universities are paid per student, that's why we internationalized. There is a second reason, the science or positivistic ideology of internationalization, that also comes in. The second explanation for why we do so much in English. There's nothing wrong with English. I love English, let me be clear. I love the English language. I wish I would speak it as good as I speak German, but okay. I understand many more languages than most of you probably, so I'm proud of that. But my English is not my best language. But I do love it. I like English movies. I like Hollywood. I like poetry. I like discussing with colleagues things in English, like the tenure track we discussed on Zoom. Very funny. However, its dominance is very problematic. It's dominance. It's dominating academia. We are killing the Dutch language. This is a cultural blamage. It's a misdaad. We are disconnecting from the past. Yeah? We are disconnecting from the past. Previous professors, previous academics were writing in Dutch. We are disconnecting from it. It's also very clear that we could have endorsed a multilingual model. We could say you can publish in English and Dutch, but you're not paid for it. The VU, you're not allowed to. You can do it, it's a hobby. It's a nice hobby. Coming to my last point, so my first point is the money. The second point related is Americanization, or whatever you call it. Some people call it English, probably globish is a better word. My third point is the spiritual and societal relevance of universities. So why is it that we have become so irrelevant? We have nothing to add to the discussion on Ukraine or Israel or even Corona. Very little. It's all up to journalists. Well, it has everything to do with this language. It has everything to do with every professor is hired, tenured, because of the students that vote for his field or her field. We have very little flexibility in actually addressing problems that are living in society. And that is also because we need to publish in English peer-reviewed journals. We are totally focused on it, and we have no experience of relevance when we write in newspapers. When we talk in podcasts, it's considered to be hobby. It's valorization. It's what the losers do. You want the MBO money, and then you do a little bit of valorization. But it's not considered to be a key academic competence, being able to interfere in public debate. But many more problems are related to this. For instance, we don't, the basic idea of universities, of course, that you educate people after secondary education. That's the first purpose. The second is, of course, doing research, scholarship. So why is it that we educate so many people for jobs that don't exist, that we're not looking for? Huh? We have far too little doctors, tech people, students that can actually do something in the educational system at the level of applied education, MBOs, PABO students on the master level. Why are there no students? Why don't we feel responsible for this? We are publishing in international l'art pour l'art elitist systems that are completely alienated from the world we live in. De geestelijke irrelevantie van de universiteit is zeer zorgwekkend. We have become more and more irrelevant. When activists enter my teaching room, I'm also kind of happy. I worked at the VU, not at the UvA, so that's probably explaining a lot. We don't have that many activists. But I saw one person from the VU in the room. Okay, we do have a lot of scholarship, fortunately. I mean, there are good things at the VU too. But I love the VU, but just as a final point of consideration, activists do bring in topics to discuss and ask us, so what about gender? What about ecology? So I tend to be pretty anti-woke, and I have criticisms on all those topics, from NATO to Corona and gender studies, but I like to discuss them, and I count many wokies to my friends because they like discussion. I like activist scientists because they actually bring in the thinking. They require me to go into all those journals and search for things and see what is positively speaking considered to be the truth, the consensus. Can we discuss this? So, but there's actually very little space in academia to do this. So that's why I generally think that some activism broadens our perspectives and opens up our mind. Whereas the peer review focused on journal writing, I mean, consider that most journals, consider that most journals aren't even read. The only people that read them are the people that publish in them. They are also very expensive, by the way. So what is the model of academia? What is our spiritual relevance? We don't bring anything. I know journalists from NRC, Trouw, Volkskrant. None of them actually read those journals. We are irrelevant. We think that we are relevant because we are in a Willem Elschot situation of the Wereldtijdschrift. Yeah? Read that book. So I made 3 points. When you think about the ideal university, then really start with a new model of financing it. The money is so problematic in the current system. We need to be more solidary, for instance, with studies like most studies from the humanities, certain obscure studies in the life sciences, like biology, like mathematics. It's a shame that these departments are in problem, and is very much related to the finance. The idea of what is worth financing. So first point. Second point is related to it, unfortunately, the dominance of English. I'm not against English, I love English, again. But why don't we have a cultivated debate on all kinds of topics in Dutch? Why are we so hysterically focused on an international scene? By the way, English or American people don't really read Dutch philosophers or biologists. Just reality check. It's an all in-between world. We all end up in the ocean. Yeah? Dutch people talking English, they laugh at us. It's a very shallow quality. Yeah? I know there are exceptions, but most are in an in-between world discussing in English with Germans and Danish people on Goethe. It's bizarre. Second point. Third point, the societal relevance is also under fire due to the finance and due to the Americanization. So public debate, what is our relevance? The job market, what do we do for jobs? Serious question.
Okay, now we are going to do the discussion. Yeah, thanks. Okay, you said a lot. We cannot talk about all the different topics, so maybe this irrelevance and if you think about the academic freedom when it's at stake in practice, is maybe my question, like how do we bring together this public debate that I think all three of you want in the university, and how do you combine that with the academic research, the peer reviews, all that kind of things? Maybe that's a question for now, and maybe Petra can start to react to, and then we go to Eunice.
Thank you. I like your points. Again, medicine is a bit different. It's a study conducted in Dutch. And then a few years ago, we started with minor programs for a couple of months. It's really heavy for doctors to speak English. So very often these programs are still given in Dutch. There is a massive problem with Dutch. English is for medicine the least of our problems. I'm really happy when students read. Whatever it is, they don't read newspapers, they don't read books, they don't read anything. One anecdote is a student seeing another student read a book, and she says to the reading student, she says, "Wow, I see you reading all the time. Are you reading a lot?" And the student with the book says, "Yeah, I read an awful lot. I think I read 15 books a year." Yeah, so I'm waiting, what's happening? And she says, "Wow, 15 books. I don't think I read 15 books in my life." Yeah, so forget the English. Any language, anything they read, I'm happy. So that's one thing. The financialization, that's a massive issue. Researchers do where the money is. That's so, and the money is not in equality. It's not in gender equality. It's not in ecology. It's not in planetary health. It's not there. The money is in where you can maybe earn back, like in whatever is a business case or could be a business case, or where we can reduce costs. There's very much money there. That's what's happening in the health field. So yeah, that's a big problem. And if you stay within these topics, then you can pretty much do what you think is important. Anything that reduces costs in health and healthcare. Yeah. So yeah, the money rules.
Yeah.
Definitely.
but maybe what my question actually was, that you all three want to have more discussion inside the university.
So we need,
and what do we need to do to make sure that that's happening?
So universities need to stand up against this system, and they don't. And that's a big issue, because now they're standing up against the budget cuts. And that pisses me off, to be frank, because I didn't see them calling out loud when there were genocides, when there's climate change. I did not see or hear my colleagues. I see them now that their funding is at stake, and that's when we suddenly have to sign petitions. All the rest that we did was activist, and it was not professional, and it was, you know, outside the professional scope. Now that we get to protest in favor of the university's whatever business case, now it's okay to take to the streets and go to Den Haag and protest.
And just to make sure, you're speaking about professors, people working at the university.
Yeah, working. Well, also students are also called out. They could also do more.
Yeah.
Really.
Sure, and then go to
Yeah,
Eunice.
just a small response, and then Eunice, go to your response to my talk. So
Thank you for helping me.
Many of the things that you bring into the discussion are actually more related to the political realm, and I think we should offer an infrastructure to do political discussion. Let me be clear. But the first thing I find very interesting, because that is also a problem of your problem. How come that medicine students don't need to read books? It's a shame. You shouldn't be allowed in university.
They read pictures.
You're a department. I mean, why is there a department in which you're allowed not reading books? What happened? And I think that the model of also finance, but also publish or perish, made a lot of teachers ignorant to this problem. Just accepting, oh, you're not an intellectual. Well, you're intelligent, so it's okay to study medicine. Why? Why do we tolerate this? Why is it so easy to study medicine?
Yeah. Other discussion, a lot of discussions. Eunice.
So I need to make a small nuanced distinction here. So you may find overlapping between what Petra and I say and Jelle says. But this overlapping, you need to consider what is the end point of it. Let's say all of us in different ways may agree with issues of the problems of the financing of the university. Money is a problem, publishing is a problem, and so on. But you need to see this particular grievance orients to what kind of politics. Is the politics of liberation and a planetary view or ethno-nationalism? So please keep in mind in that distinctions. The overlap does not mean agreement, because sometimes there are similar tone, but the end goal of that overlap is different. So please keep that in mind, dear audience. So let me actually forget this issue of financing, because that's a different kind of headache. So you say universities have basically lost, their spiritual relevance is lost. 1 point. Another thing also you say, so valorization, which means not engaging university with society, writing opinion pieces and so on and so in Dutch, that is not been embedded within a university culture. Did I understand you correctly? Or university?
You say a lot of things. So I'm a nationalist, not an ethno-nationalist.
That's
first of all. No. You.
Okay, nationalist. Good, nationalist. But let me ask you that.
Stop this meta philosophy. Second point, very important. It's not only opinionating. We are allowed to have academic debate in Dutch. That also means that you influence the opinion pages, the op-eds in Volkskrant and NRC, but it's not the same. It's actually that you have journals.
That was not my point.
Okay, no, it was my point.
Good. Now let me ask you.
So that's why I'm putting it into your toolbox, so you can use it for setting up your argument.
Thank you.
So I'm for a Dutch academic system.
But okay, Dutch academic system.
Also open for globalization, but not only globalization.
No. But so that this is part of, basically you want academics as a part of their job profile, labor contract, to have this possibility of valorization in order to basically either in Dutch, but let's say in Dutch for your sake, to be able to write, have opinions, or have a public platform. Correct? Did I understand you correctly?
Yeah, both labor market and public debate, yes, and so Dutch academia. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, you want a labor contract to monetize a spiritual relevance of university. Basically, this is Protestant Calvinism in its essence. You want to monetize a spirituality. So if there is a spiritual relevance into university, it means it is my political responsibility as an academic to actually understand what I do as knowledge production has to become a tool of emancipation, be it in English, or be it in Dutch, or be it in Arabic, or whatever. But let's say, so that's my reaction to you. But
I don't understand the reaction, because I didn't say that the only purpose of university is to get you into the labor market. That's why I also talked about the field of German.
No, but we are labor. As academics, we are labor. We are contractors.
No, I was talking about students and what we do in the world. I was not talking about our own jobs. I mean, I don't see your point. What's your point regarding Protestantism? And
basically, let's put it differently. If me as a labor, as an academic, I'm a labor. Which means I'm contracted and I'm paid for.
Mm-hmm.
So within that contract, there should be a possibility that I have time paid for it to valorize. It means turn my science, my knowledge, to something which society understands, either via newspapers, doing social media work, something, or publish book, or doing podcasts or something, which should not be a hobby, but be part of our scientific endeavor as a labor and paid for, correct?
Just to be clear, so I'm, so to say, for a tolerant position. So I wanted to say that it should be possible that if you wanted to, then you would be able to valorize or to engage in the Dutch academic debate. It's not the same as that you should do and that you need to publish in the Volkskrant every year. That was not what I said.
As a could do, as an option, correct?
Yeah, could do as an option as part of your job, indeed.
So you and I, some time ago, with what he referred, actually we were part of focus group on tenure track policy of our faculty. And you're familiar with what is called reward and recognition. It means it is embedded in our labor contract to do research, and as a part of research, you have to do knowledge utilization and you have to do valorization. So
it's not true.
But this is also a discussion that's going very far away from academic freedom, and the people here in the room are interested in that.
That was only ideology. I think you didn't notice that.
Just a moment. So to turn it to academic freedom, to the discussion, so here is interesting. Actually, when it's come to valorization, then the point is that actually when we try to valorize, then the hammer of the institution comes, this is not what should be valorized because it's not good for our prestige. So that's where the academic freedom becomes interesting. And so here is a problem. The approaching society, let's say I'm an English speaker, I teach in English, I have resisted learning Dutch for a variety of the reasons, and so on and so Wilder can go to hell, but I got help to actually publish in Dutch, me and Petra, on issues of Palestine, reacting to those idiotic rectors. We wrote a piece in Dutch. When somebody speaks in English, of course, again, different ways you are censored to speak English, but when somebody English, doesn't mean my colleagues cannot help me. We are a community. So, as presence of a language doesn't mean a loss of another one, because as a community of academics, we work together.
Yeah, okay, but maybe, Petra.
No, I think that what Jelle is ignoring is what people from across the world bring to academia. And there's a lot of ideas. If we would stick in Dutch, we would do our Dutch thing. That's a big problem. The world is not like that anymore. It sounds a bit 50s.
Say that.
Well, it sounds a bit 50s if you stress it like that. Like we need to have a good debate in Dutch. I think that yes, we need good debates in whatever language, and I think we all read a lot of English. Maybe not in philosophy, but the rest of us we do. English is our academic language, it would be a problem in all sorts of ways. And we will not be able to go back to the Dutch. You know, medicine is a worldwide system that's problematic of itself, but it is like that. So if
gender studies, of course, a very novel field. So I understand that you don't have a German and French tradition. Okay, but medicine is. Oh, it's true. I know the field. It overlaps with philosophy.
You missed a few. You missed a few domains.
If you compare it to medicine, medicine has a very long German tradition. So what if you ignore it? And that holds for philosophy, an Arabic tradition. I don't know if I'm pointing to you correctly, if you understand the language, Arabic. But yeah, but there is an Arabic tradition completely ignored in the Netherlands. Why? So I'm for a multilingual model, and not for a 50s model, a multilingual model.
Okay, I think we agree on the fact that there should be multiple languages in the university. Okay, maybe we do a second try to bring it back to academic freedom. And then I would like to ask Younes to give his statement. Maybe we can, from there on, go to academic freedom. How, like, the concern of Saskia in the beginning, who said, like, I feel that it's difficult in the university with students and academics to speak about what's happening in the world.
So we'll right quickly delve in here, but before actually I go on my rant, first, thank you so much. It's quite humbling that at this time of the night, I come to a room and actually people who are, some of them are students, some of them are not academics, come and listen on academic freedom, things which people in the university, those crazy people in the university do. So it's extremely humbling, and thank you so much. So, باسم الشهداء about الجماعية وأطفال الغزة وفلسطين محتلة. Since I've been asked basically to give this talk, I have been quite much thinking, so what kind of an example I can pick up and make my point. So it's been extremely easy because every other day some other shit hit the fan and I could pick up an example. So, for instance, the two white male professors in the position of power wrote in Terra how universities should be empathic and yet neutral, and no actual politics should muddy the university. And I thought, oh, this is a good example. And I thought, okay, so how can I use the example? So these two particular white male professors misused the notion of empathy to turn universities and students and staff into empathic zombies that should feel for Palestinians, but yet should not act for Palestinians. So they should feel injustice, be empathic toward it, but not act for injustice. But here is something. So I was trying to basically, these two particular white male professors profess Christianity, believe in Christianity. So I thought, let's try to do a thought experiment, as philosophers do. So I start imagining these two guys who are specifically very much well-connected or partial to our political party, SGP. So if they were alive at the time of the crucifixion of Jesus, and they saw the Lord and Savior is up there, so would they sit and stand as empathic observer, or just they would act something for their Lord and Savior? Or how would they feel if they would try to act and everybody would call them anti-Semite? So how would they do that? Then after that, another shit hit the fan. So Muhammad Khatib, the Palestinian activist who connected to Samidoun, was stopped through governmental intervention to speak in a red bout. So what I'm trying to say through these examples is this. Since the 7th October, every other day, some new shit, something new has happened, which basically is a form of silencing and muzzling which happens in the Dutch academia. So I'm giving this with a certain degree of humor and try to basically keep you awake, but I'm standing here basically wounded. But wounded in a sense that basically I have to live with the silence and I start silencing and start keep thinking, what is the ideal university in Netherlands? What could it be? So what could it be that I have to keep breathing this poisonous air of Dutch academia and I still survive it? And I think, what could be the ideal university? So, and at the same time, when I say this stuff, I have to keep thinking, so what kind of a scolding I'm going to get for what I'm going to say today, or what kind of passive-aggressive reaction I'm going to get from my colleagues after talking what I'm talking. So, you see, from this air, I'm talking to you. From this kind of wound, I'm talking to you and thinking about ideal university. So, what would be the ideal university for critical thinkers, gendered and racialized minorities and activists that can survive it and contribute to the betterment of planet? So, my answer is simple. Ideal university should not be even tried in Western Europe, especially in Netherlands with its colonial history, because European universities, by the nature of their design and by the nature of the way the European notions of knowledge production are shaped, are trade schools. They are trade schools that they reflect societies and governments. So, how could exist an ideal university, or how could we dream of the ideal university that serves a society that is majority elected and outright Islamophobic politician? How in that setup can we dream of that ideal university? So, and how can I dream of that ideal university when people of the society keep accepting Zionist politicians? So that's why they should not even dream of this when the managers keep lip servicing populism and out of fear of the far rights, they delete gender studies, delete Islamic studies, delete Middle Eastern studies. So in this setup, how can I just dream it? So that dream, in my opinion, it should not be even dreamt, because even if you dream it, they stole it, they steal it, they market it in order to produce an Amsterdam which is tolerant, which is plural, which is acceptable. But they do that. They sell it and market it in order to hide something else. Hide the transphobia, hide the uneven number of professors in a university, and mask the silencing and self-censoring which happens for racialized minorities within the white academia, and full professors happily practice it and ride the wave of their power. So, this is very hopeless. I apologize for breaking hopes. Some people may, with a quite good intention, say, so we cannot live in such a hopeless world. We don't want such a hopeless world. I can engage with that good intention, and I start thinking of hoping. But under one particular condition. Any ideal university would be built on the ruination of the current universities. So on that ruination, an ideal can be dreamed. And I'm aware that I'm asking for too much. I'm aware this is a radical approach or radical change. But Dutch society voted for a government that aims at ruination of knowledge economy and universities. So actually, in practice, in a real politic, maybe I am closer to my dream than those who dream of reformation, decolonizing universities, and compromising. So, in a way, it's a very interesting realpolitik jam. But what I want to say with this basically hopeless rant. One, universities, by definition, are tools of the state. Tools of the state cannot be ideal. Universities reflect society and its history. If the history is dark, is racist, if the society is Islamophobe, university mirrors it. And also, in different ways to repeat you, universities are factory degrees and trade schools. So, when you have politics of the state, and when you have dark histories, and when you have business model, are part and parcel of what we call universities, how can we dream or think of ideal universities? Let's stick to what they have. Call it what it is. It's a business. Don't dream into the business.
Thank you. Well, listening to your story, I was thinking about. It's quite clear that you're very disappointed in Dutch academia and also in what the university is here. I was thinking, if you look at your students and the people studying at the university, does that give you hope?
Yes and no. Of course, within the classroom, there are sometimes good debates, students who are quite social justice oriented, students who protested. We saw all the protests. So that is, let's say, a glimmer of hope. But also at the same time, I know students also grow up. Students also go get jobs. Students also develop families. Students also get to this thing called life. So, and sometimes in that story, the politics gets diluted and bye-bye. So when I'm looking at the reality of it, this hope is false. It's extremely fragile. I can be happy in my classroom and I enjoy in critical, wonderful things which they tell me and teach me at sometimes. But I know it's episodic. So I'm trying to be very realistic about the hope.
Yeah.
And not purchase into it as a dream, as an illusion.
No, but I can imagine that the classroom and the open discussion that you say that you have there can be an example for the rest of the university. So what do you do there in the classroom that you think like, hey, this should be something that we should do with the whole university, not only in the classroom, but outside that classroom as well?
So what I do in a classroom, let's put it this way. If I want to be very practical and very actually pragmatic, there are usual tips and points that how it can be translated, but I don't see it in different ways. Again, unfortunately, you and I connect in that point. I don't see actually the university management or university as a structure is interested in that, is interested in the fact that there would be these basically tensions worked through dialogue. Because they need basically students to graduate. They need basically things to be done as a normal thing. And also, there are vested groups. Remember, university reflects society. So it means there are lobbies, political lobbies, who are influencing the academia. And also, there are some people who, for some reason, feel socially unsafe every time there's a discussion. And Palestine is a very good example of it. And they shut it down, and then it cannot be translated, cannot be expanded further. So the very university is the obstacle of what is in the classroom.
Okay, clear. It seems now also as if this discussion is also taking now place outside of university. I'm wondering if that's a good idea, but maybe, Jelle, you can respond. And not to all. I want to go back to this academic freedom. Okay, there are students here who say, I'm worried about that. I feel that we don't have an open discussion anymore. What should the university do, or students do, or you do as professors or academics to make sure that this debate is happening inside the university?
I'm not sure whether we disagree.
And you need to talk in
I'm not sure whether we disagree that much on this topic. So we disagree on a lot. So you're to talk about racism, transphobia, I disagree with it so fundamentally. It's you seem to be very poorly integrated because you don't speak Dutch. Yeah, the question is really: is this
I'm not integrated at all?
Is this only a Wilders thing, or should it have been your responsibility to ask if I can work here in the Netherlands? Should I not try to dive into the language? Why did you not do that?
So let me break it to you.
It's a question.
No, let me break it to you. I'm not a Dutch citizen.
But you work here. You're tenured. You're probably working here for more than 10 years.
No. So maybe you don't know enough about me. So
maybe this is also a bit of a personal discussion.
Let's keep that away. So you don't know enough about me. So let's not assume.
Okay.
That will help.
Okay. We were in a committee discussion at the VU, and I thought that we were both. Okay, so he's actually leaving the VU. So if not, the question is, let's say you work here for 5 years. So why wouldn't you integrate here in our language? Why not? Serious question, but answer later on. To go back to the academic freedom issue, I think that generally speaking, Inviting activists is, well, it might be an inspiration. So at the one hand, I don't think that judgment-free positivistic science is really a possibility. There are always judgments, there is always a certain amount of activism, okay? So there's no real objectivity, but you strive towards it. It's not a unicorn, but you strive towards it's hard to get to. At the other hand, I think that real radical activism with a non-academic inspiration is also very far away from academia. So it can be an inspiration, but what you want to offer, I think, as academia, is input for discussion on, for instance, Palestine, or Gaza, or Israel, or Islamic history, or Judaism, or theological interpretations of what's the different idea of God in Islam and Christianity, and so on, all religions related to this issue. So when activists say that we should take a stance as academia, I'm also a little bit hesitant, because why? I mean, of course universities reflect society. Of course, that's a basic idea of Hegel, of Marx. That's very fundamental social fact. You cannot change that, so I don't see the point. But what can you do?
Yeah, maybe the point.
What can you do regarding academic freedom is you can facilitate discussion. And we are in a Dutch context, and we should facilitate it. And it's indeed difficult that we haven't facilitated it regarding corona, regarding stikstof, regarding Gaza, regarding Ukraine. So we underperformed. Yeah? At the same time, activism, also related to XR, ecology, is a bridge too far, I think.
Okay, maybe
because then the question is, why should academia be activistic? One final anecdote, I'll go to you. After the breakdown of the apartheid regime in South Africa, academics were actually critical towards the Netherlands that we cancelled the universities there. And the professors working there said, why did you cancel us? Because we were actually in the people that were trying to voice criticism towards the establishment, the regime. Couldn't you have let open the discussion? Yeah, that was a criticism after apartheid. So why are we now canceling all Russian universities? Why? Why do some people want to cancel all relations with Israel? It's a very stupid idea. You want to open discussion, you want diplomacy. So I disagree with this far-fetching idea of disconnecting from autocratic regimes. I don't think that's a good idea.
Okay, okay, Peter. He said a lot. We cannot respond to everything, but I think this point of, I think that's something that maybe people share in the room, that there's a discussion also going on, like how do you speak as within an academic university, and how does activism come about that, or how does it relate to that? And you do, like, it's personal. Really, it's for you personal as well, because you are an academic and you are activist within XR. How does it relate to each other for you personally?
I really have a hard time following the discussion and catching up with it, because I'm
but
trying
maybe
to,
bring it back to
I
what
hope
you want to
I'm not the only one, but could be. One thing I would like to say is that if you your question to Jonas was, is there hope?
Yeah.
Like, and you said yes and no. And one thing I think that we as academics and as academia are not doing right is our pedagogies. I think we need to be better teachers if we want students to be critical, etc. So we need to be more demanding. They need to read. We need to make sure that we can send people away who are not doing their homework, or not engaged, or not like sort of. And students, some students want that, and not all of them. And yes, in medicine, there are students who just want to be doctors, which is also generally a good idea. So, and they can maybe be good doctors without having read Islamic.
You seriously think so?
I don't know.
Okay,
you gave the example yourself.
I know, but
let's try to give it back to like we
Bizarre.
are. Yeah.
But that's what they're doing now. Like, and I would not say that all our doctors are bad doctors because they're not reading. I would like them to read. I think it's a better idea, and also for doctors to engage in the health debate. So our pedagogies and our teaching should be better, and for that we need time, we need money. We do not have to, you know, we're producing workers. So yes, I agree with that. What else was there?
Yeah, I really would like to focus on this difference about this activism and academic freedom, because I think that's something that is brought into the public debate a lot, this distinction.
I can put that, I can discuss that in my statement.
Okay.
What if I do that now?
That's sure.
What
Let's
if I
do
that now, and maybe we get to that point? Yeah. Let's give it a try. Okay. So, in 2 weeks, the Dutch Supreme Court will rule on my trespassing case. In June 2021, I got arrested along with 7 others from Extinction Rebellion for occupying the headquarters of ABP, the world's second largest institutional investor, which had 15 billion euros tied up in fossil fuels. While ABP supports Dutch pensions, many around the globe suffer from the repercussions of these investments. Following years of environmental protests, ABP decided to divest in October 2021. And this case underscores 2 critical issues. 1, university employees and public servants have been legally bound to invest in corporations that threaten life on Earth. And 2, without persistent protest, meaningful change is unlikely. The climate crisis represents the largest public health emergency of the 21st century. Planetary health is an emerging field in science and healthcare, although it remains underfunded. Researchers in health are increasingly tasked with examining the health impacts of deteriorating life-sustaining systems. They're also increasingly urged to take a stand, especially given their trusted roles in society. In 2019, The Lancet's editor-in-chief, Richard Horton, called on scientists and health professionals to engage in peaceful protest, including civil disobedience. By 2021, over 200 medical journals echoed this call, urging professionals to hold their governments accountable. In particular for academics, health professionals, and public servants, climate activism raises ethical questions. For instance, whether we have a duty to engage in activism. Maybe certain social or professional positions carry special responsibilities, and if so, which forms of activism are morally acceptable? Activism can take various forms, from writing op-eds, as was discussed earlier, and peaceful protests, to civil disobedience and direct action. Researchers Bennett and colleagues propose ethical criteria for activism among health professionals. It should be non-violent, well-justified, a last resort, likely effective, and minimally harmful. Academic activism must also be rooted in science. When done right, it is some sort of science communication, and it can be more impactful than an academic paper. Despite the urgent need for action, the scientific community, including Western medicine, has long promoted apolitical impartiality. Thus, climate activism may conflict with professional expectations and could end up in personal and professional repercussions, including a loss of trust in our professional commitment or competencies, and likewise, societal trust in our professions does not self-evidently extend to climate activism. Scientists and health professionals need to act carefully to maintain credibility. At Extinction Rebellion, we refer to these types of stakes as having skin in the game. Many professionals fear losing their positions or credibility, with some climate scientists and civil disobedient doctors already facing suspension or job loss. Especially academics documenting the dire consequences of climate change may feel compelled to act, but not only those whose job it is to document global warming. When higher education institutions as a whole commit to, for instance, inclusivity, equality, or other higher values incorporated in mission statements and sustainable development goals, they were also mentioned earlier, while simultaneously accepting funding from fossil fuel companies, they may create a morally unbearable conflict. Academic freedom does not exist in a vacuum. Academics voicing their concerns from a position of authority do so because they are tied to the social contract between science and society. The distinction between academic freedom and activist speech becomes untenable and in itself a breach of that social contract. There are also profound benefits of academic activism for institutions, for scientific knowledge, for individual academics. It fosters meaning, it motivates research, it enhances public engagement. Climate activism channels the emotional responses elicited by facing the realities of climate change, which researchers are supposed to do. And activism works. For instance, following our Scientist Rebellion Cut the Ties campaign, VU University announced in April 23 that it would sever research ties with the fossil fuel industry, becoming the second university globally to do so after Princeton. However, Princeton has recently rolled back their policies after activist students exposed the university's ownership of PetroTiger, a private investment company with stakes in the fossil fuel industry. And this illustrates the continued abuse of power from the fossil fuel industry and their dangerous strategies. Universities booster the fossil fuel industry's business strategies. In reality, this means giving them a social license to kill under the protection of academic freedom. Across the globe, academics and health professionals will intensify their efforts for planetary health. Answers to broader questions of justice, solidarity, peace, and the protection of life itself cannot be achieved through a detached scientific lens. Under these conditions, academic freedom is worth exactly as much as the greenwashing ads of the fossil fuel industry. When universities perpetuate a neoliberal focus on scientific progress and continue to take money from unethical sources, they neglect the outcry of the living world. Meaningful change has resulted from protest. Our constitutions, our voting rights, our cycling paths, ethical regulations in health research, and even academic freedom itself are product of protest. Climate activism is not merely a duty, it is an urgent necessity for the survival of our planet and future generations, because life depends on activism.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Maybe it's interesting to bring it then back to the beginning, what Saskia said. Because, of course, it becomes interesting at the moment that activism is in university, and maybe it is silencing certain voices, or maybe certain voices cannot be heard anymore, and then you have this conflict. Yeah. If I understood you correctly, you say, like, on certain conditions, I see this protesting as valuable and as a form of academic freedom. Absolutely. Yeah. Jelle, how would you respond to that?
I'm not sure whether I really disagree to start with.
Maybe to bring it back to Saskia again, because it's a really clear example. Students want to discuss something, or they want to discuss something with a speaker, and the speaker is silenced because of activism.
Yeah, well, we discussed that already, but...
I don't think we did so, but...
Well, the question is, so what can you expect from a university? So although it is an instrument of the state to a certain extent, although it reflects the state to a certain extent. So for instance, take the new policy to allow Schiphol to keep growing under Minister Barry Madlener. It's a very strange thing, because Schiphol is owned by Amsterdam for almost 50%, owned by Amsterdam, not by the VU or the UvA. So it's only 20%? Okay, then I think that a lot of the other shares are of Rotterdam. So I think that there are certain specific public institutions that they can take responsibility. And those are places where you could say, indeed, that activism can add a lot.
Yeah.
In this specific case, for instance, also regarding taxing of kerosene. So what can a university add to this political debate? A bit, but I don't know. Do you want to block a debate? I don't really see that much added value. A bit more of a critical, to teach you a little bit, if I may.
Sure, explain to me.
The disadvantage of activism regarding ecology, I think, is sometimes that you constantly get this feeling of it's 5 for 12, it's almost there, we need to get to the 2030 deadline, it's a shame, it's an epicalistic way of communicating that for me doesn't really fit the academic attitude. So sometimes I miss, and that's what I share with you, I think, my criticism would be, what is academia actually offering to get to articulating the next steps? So what are the next steps, for instance, regarding, different fields, but what can the Netherlands do to get more energy? What can the Netherlands do regarding saving some biodiversity in the world? What can the Netherlands do in electrification of households? If you search for these things, there are all kinds of think tanks that can help you out. But in academia, I see a lot of, screaming and saying that all things need to change. But sometimes I simply miss the scenario thinking. So. And then I look at the activists, and they want to throw paint at the paintings. They want to scream in the discussions. It's not that I don't understand, but is this really what you can add from? So my question would really be: can activists maybe also relate this? Can you fruitfully combine future studies, science, and activism? Isn't that the way forward? And isn't academia actually allowing you to far more than XR thinks it is? So, for instance, if I look in the field of business, subsidies
I think
at
you made your point.
Just one more point at MWO, then it's actually much. There are many more funds than there were 5 years ago to do research that is ecologically relevant. So I don't see a lack of potence, so to say. So I miss the reality check at the side of the activists. At the same time, I understand it. Although then I would say go to the municipality of Amsterdam, there you can change a lot.
Do you want to react or not?
Not really.
Okay, maybe Younes or not?
So I'm not sure if I react. If I should react to Jelle, but because Saskia's case is a good example. Yeah. So and goes back to the issue of academic freedom, or in different ways connects to you and your case as well. So. You see, we are discussing academic freedom, something to do with the university. And there is this crowd which is sitting here. So it means the very idea of academia, university, attract certain political interests, and politics, I mean everyday interests. So it means there is certain degree of, okay, these people, academics, have some expertise. They're supposed to say something. We try either sometimes take it with a grain of salt, sometimes trust them. So it means university is a platform of representation, and it has some embedded prestige. So in this context, then who do we give platform to, and who do we allow to get traction out of prestige of university? So then it becomes interesting to see, okay, should we give platform to somebody who represents military-industrial complex with a lot of difficult history to get and draw prestige from it and give the platform to that? So this is basically when you see disruption, when you see basically discussions of, okay, no, this person should not come, this person should come. So here, because university is not just in a space of, it's not Balie. It's not just basically you facilitate discussions, dialogue, and so on. No, it comes with a certain certain representational quality, certain value system, certain prestige. So in that prestige, you need to make a distinction. What kind of ideologies come with the degree of dehumanization? What kind of it comes for betterment of society? What comes with the social justice orientation or no? So this is why, for instance, in those cases, I would sympathize with the protesters because they're disrupting certain ideology, not necessarily that colonial. So of course, when you contextualize different. So academic freedom is important because university is a matter of platform of the representation and prestige.
Okay.
Just one further point regarding the example of Saskia of the VU and Shell and the petrochemical industry, and you also speak of the military-industrial complex, or the oil complex, so to say, related to it, isn't it? I want just to. I also happen to know this case. The VU worked with a few oil-related companies.
Yeah.
Eventually, two. The VU was a very irrelevant university in relation to the oil industry. Highly irrelevant. It was a zero, absolute zero. There were very few chemists, very few professors in physics that were relevant for that industry. Indirectly, they were, because they were educated at the VU, and then they find employability over there, okay? But regarding science, also financial structures, financing certain topics. And the VU at the same time wanted to be the most sustainable university of the Netherlands, or one of the more. It's not the Triodos of the country, comparing it to banks, but it's okay. So we do a lot of, I don't work there anymore. You do a lot of research related to sustainability. That's a fact. But the fact is also that it's very much alienated from the unecological business. Now, instead of managers and professors thinking, oh, well, that is maybe part of the problem. We, perfect ideals, they, bad guys. Let's bridge the gap and see if we can do actually relevant research. They said very moralistically, oh, we don't want to cooperate with the big bad oil barons anymore. Getting more irrelevant. The strategy could also have been, let's see if we can cooperate, help these guys get into the transition to a next phase of deindustrialization. But that's in a way, so freedom of speech is also related to cancellation and ethics washing, and greenwashing. So the VU made even reclames, started to voicing, propagandizing that they are real sustainable, and now they cancelled relations to the oil industry. Well, they weren't substantial at any given moment of time. And
okay, I think you made your point. I promise to also go to the audience, and I'm curious how Saskia listened to Younes, because then we go to the audience and maybe bring it back to what you really want to hear.
Yeah, so I think this was a very messy discussion, but I would like to really just ask one more question to both Petra and Younes on the platform discussion. I think it's very interesting to hear, what do you believe is the hurt done by having this platform given to individuals that you don't agree with? Because I don't want Russian embassy to have a platform at the university. I get this hate, but I struggle to explain to people and also understand myself what is it about the university, because I think that we cannot have these principles going against discussion, because the moment we say, yes, some things don't deserve a platform within the university, that's not nice anymore. Then we're going against our colleagues that want to have these discussions in university, and then we are imposing our ideas on them. So maybe you could explain a little bit more about what you think is the line, whether there can be an objective line, and what really is the value of the platform.
Okay, and then I ask you to be both short so that we also can go to other questions. Who would like to start? Yeah, you need to share the microphones a bit, because I need one for the audience.
Yes. There need to be some sort of criterion of who do you invite. Like, if in the end you could say, like, if anything goes or anyone can be invited because any question is relevant or important or interesting, then you could invite the mafia, right? And you could invite the mafia and have a discussion with them. And we don't do that. Universities don't invite the mafia, as far as I know. Which maybe they do, but I never heard of it. I hope not, but you had a prisoner, yeah. Well, but you know my point. Like, so yes, you have to think, who do you invite and who do you give a platform to and why? And it's not just because it's academically interesting or academically relevant or from a knowledge perspective interesting. It's also you have a contract with society. And what does it mean? What message does it send across to society? That's also part of the discussion. Not the only argument, but also an argument.
Okay. Younes?
So I have a little more of the, let's say, radical approach for these reasons. Because you mentioned a lot of we, and there is a simple question of who is that we? Because the we, which nowadays sometimes tries to disrupt or sometimes getting loud and trying to basically use the megaphones and so on, is the we which says, historically, we were not given the representation. We were not given enough platform. University never allowed us to talk. So we were basically underrepresented, and now basically you become the rubbing salt over the wound, adding insult to the injury by actually bringing the military-industrial complex. So if, let's say, there was enough platform for those who are underrepresented, then I would understand, okay, the usual dominant majority, the superior, certain superior groups, okay, they are the society as well, they should talk. But this disruption is an expression of a pain, historical pain of exclusion, which now becomes protest, now becomes loudmouth, now becomes a megaphone. So what you see is not exactly protest against that colonial or nature, is against the larger story. That is where the pain comes. And because of that pain, at this moment of history, I make radical choices or push for radical choices. And I say, some people talk too much. Please stop talking. Give voice to the others.
Okay. There's a question here, I understood. I will hold the microphone.
Yeah, it's not a question. I saw you in despair pointing at the words academic freedom.
Yeah.
Hoping that people would talk about that. That didn't happen, in my view. I think I'm the oldest one in the room.
Yeah.
And that had the advantage of being able to report about university in the 60s, when I started my career as a linguist. And as a linguist, I'm, of course, interested in the meaning of academic freedom.
Yeah.
It had a quite different meaning from what has been discussed here. It was connected to fundamental science, and I missed that in the discussions at all. It had to do with the freedom of people who were working at the university to decide on what topic they would proceed to study.
Yeah.
That's changed. That changed by in the 70s, because a lot of money they took away from the first Geldstroom. They took away a large part and put it at NWO.
I think we don't have the time to discuss the whole, but maybe make a short point too, so that we go to other questions as well.
I think my point then, to shorten it, is why didn't you pay attention to this notion of academic freedom as it was, and it should be, actually?
I answer very shortly. Because I said it, as from what I see, it's striving to academic freedom is a chase. And in that chase, a lot of things happen. And also, if, let's say, academic freedom about the freedom of choice of a topic of research, the thing is, the activism is a different linchpin in academic life. Basically, my knowledge, the topic maybe which I have chosen, has activated me for a certain change, and then the ideas of liberty or citizen freedom, it becomes overlapping with academic freedom. So if I don't talk about academic freedom as an idea or a thing in itself, it's because it's constantly intersecting with other things which I do as a citizen scientist, as a scientist who is a citizen. So in that intersection, that's why academic freedom cannot be a topic in itself. It it becomes a performance of academic scientists as well.
Okay.
That is why I didn't do my homework the way you would like.
Okay. There were also a lot of people working at the university or studying at the university. I think there are a lot of questions, so maybe a really urgent question about the topic of tonight. Yeah, I come to you with the microphone.
Thank you very much for the discussion so far. My name is Peter Ben Smit. I may not be the oldest in the room, but I suspect I'm the only Catholic priest studying gender studies here. So
a good introduction. What's your question?
My question goes back to the very introduction, the quotation from Theo van Gogh, who referred to genade, mercy, grace. And I wonder whether the panel would be kind enough to comment on values like grace, mercy, in the academic debate, offering mercy to others in the hope of receiving it oneself, should one's view turn out not to be entirely infallible and perfect.
Okay, difficult question for the end. Maybe to say, to paraphrase it a bit in my own words, there are maybe people who say, like, within the academia, there's a lot of, how do you say it? Talking from your own perspective, and how do we allow that critical voices or people who don't agree with you, that this discussion is still going on, that we really talk with each other.
Thank you for the translation from theology to English.
Yeah. Okay, now really polite to each other, but we have our bit.
It's beautiful having a debate. I think a problem in what you're referring to maybe is that we're used to debate and arguments and argumentation, and grace is not really kind of having a place in debates generally. It's more like if we would turn towards dialogue, other types of having conversations, and maybe we should do that more. So yes, I would be in favor of exchange of ideas, etc. And I also realize, and you made a fair point about, like, where is the academic freedom in this whole discussion? And I realized during this discussion that a lot of things have gotten in the way of academic freedom and maybe also of grace. And these are discussions about the language that we use in our institutions and how we're financed and whether we get the funding and the job demands, etc. So you make a fair point of bring that in and start being more I don't know, gracious towards each other and in the debate.
Okay, is there maybe a last question?
Can I add something to this?
Yeah, sure.
Because I have very So, where is the mercy in 400,000 people? When I talk, basically, when I say no mercy, it's not that because I'm arguing for Yunus. I'm arguing for those people who Yunus tries to talk about and write about academically and research about. Where was the mercy for them? Where was the mercy? I understand maybe in certain kind of Catholicism one has to turn the cheek, but basically, where is the mercy for those Muslims who needed to shiver when Wilders was elected? Where is the mercy then? Why constantly the people of minorities, either gender, racial as minority, they have to be little, they have to live in fear, they have to show mercy, and racial majority doesn't wake up for a moment, and institution doesn't show, oh, let me show some grace. Where was the grace of the majority? So if you ask me, of course, I'm not responding to you in the perspective, but where was your mercy? And I'm asking to all the white people in the audience, where is your mercy?
Okay. I think I asked for a last question. Is there somebody who would like to do that? No. Yes. It doesn't matter.
What philosophical stroming made you think about language in this way?
Okay. For the people at home, what philosophical language did you think about language this way? Very specific question.
That's a specific question.
And maybe give short, and then we can speak about it outside if we go to the bar.
Yeah. So language is a topic of reflection for philosophy certainly since Aristotle, but there are a few changes in the history of thinking about language linguistics. For instance, the important German school that basically said that language is not only an instrument to voice articulate thoughts that can be easily exchanged for another instrument, like you change iPhones once in a while, or smartphones once in a while. It's a different brand, doesn't matter. I just ring the same friends. No, language in its form also changes the ideas that you communicate. Huh? So the language is a transformative thing in this school of thought. And there are, so Herder is a very important philosopher of language, not so well known, and a very well-known philosopher addressing this topic is, of course, Ludwig Wittgenstein in his Philosophische Untersuchungen. But there are more. You could broadly speak of the Romantic school of linguistic philosophy. I don't know if you agree, but sociological research also points out that to be able to identify with people, it's important that you speak the same language and that you share values. So there's a sociological argument to make that people feel connected, whereas most people that generally agree with his, let's say, philosophical mindset.
Sorry. No, I really would like. This is so specific, and I tried the whole night to go back to academic freedom. It turns out to be really difficult with the three of you on stage. And it's interesting that it's a really big discussion in the university, outside the university, but here it was difficult to speak with each other about it. So what I would like to suggest is that we go to the bar and try to speak with each other, maybe outside of this room, maybe that helps. And then I would like to say thank you very much for your attention. And thank you for the speakers. Ja, precies.